Meet Shea Brennan, actor Sam Elliott's character on 1883. He's not a man with much skip in his clip. He's kind of dark and brooding and depressed and...
I think Shea's a bit of a psycho on some level.
Well, yeah, that too. But why? Shea is in charge of leading the Dutton family and a group of German immigrants northwest out of Texas. And without sharing too much, it's not going well through 5 or 6 episodes. So you get a lot of scenes like this one.
Hope you had a chance to practice with that. You ready?
When he sat down to talk to Taste of Country and select media before the series began on Paramount Plus, Sam seemed to be in character to a certain extent. I mean, he was a little dark and brooding and, well, not so much a psycho. I'm Billy Dukes, and we really dove deep into this conversation with Sam Elliott during a recent episode of the Dutton Rules podcast. Links are in the description section, but before we get to Sam explaining why Shea is so sad all the time, tap subscribe and let me know how you're enjoying 1883. On a 1 to 10 scale, are you loving it? Alright, here's Sam Elliott, and keep in mind that he was in the middle of filming during this interview, so if you're thinking he's looking a little worn down, that's why.
He's got a lot of issues, and he's complex in some ways. Number one, because he's a veteran of the Civil War. We all know what being a veteran is today. Call it what you want. Number two, he loses his family in the first episode, right off the top.
In a minute, Sam will share how all of this really heavy acting affects him emotionally. Spoiler alert, it doesn't exactly bounce off his resilient soul. But I know you're here to see him talking about the comparisons to Yellowstone. That came after the legendary actor was asked about working with Taylor Sheridan, who created both Yellowstone and 1883. And to be clear, Sam has had nothing but praise for Taylor. Everyone does. He went on for like a good minute about all Taylor has done for horses and his knowledge of the West and American history. So what he says next shouldn't be seen as a criticism of Yellowstone or Taylor Sheridan. In my opinion, he's actually kind of right.
Yellowstone is all over this. We're tainted by Yellowstone, which on some level I can't stand, because I think 1883 stands alone and will, once it comes out, people are going to say, oh, yeah, well, the only connection there is that it got John Dutton to Montana.
I'm not going to reveal any spoilers, but if you've kept up with the show, you probably agree with him here. It's not obvious through 3 episodes, but during the end of episode 4, you really start to see how this show separates itself from Yellowstone. There's a scene involving Elsa and a piano that's unlike anything that Taylor Sheridan has tried on Yellowstone. Furthermore, 1883 is narrated by a woman and arguably led by women like Isabel May and Faith Hill over actors like Sam Elliott and Tim McGraw. You contrast that to Yellowstone, where it's Kevin Costner and Cole Hauser in charge, with Kelly Riley's Beth Dutton more or less bowing to him, even though she's a strong character on her own. But what do you think? Leave a comment or email staff@tasteofcountry.com to continue the conversation. I'll respond. Sam joked that Taylor said the actor would really hate him by the end of filming, and then that never happened. It's clear, however, that the weight of his character and the show will linger. He's asked about if he can shake off the sadness easily, and at first he says he can, before pivoting with a very different response. I'm going to shut up and let Sam talk, but I will remind you to quickly tap subscribe and look for those links to Dutton Rules, a Yellowstone 1883 podcast, in the description section. All right, here's Sam one final time.
No, I've never really been haunted. I know a lot of people that talk about, taking it with them, taking it home and that. But maybe it's because I'm not an actor that anybody's going to accuse of being a chameleon. I get so deep into a part that I become someone else on some other level. I can appreciate that if that's the way you work, that it would take a long time to shake it off. Certainly when you do anything that's an emotional scene, you carry it for a while. You're becoming a little vulnerable, probably. Ultra sensitive, if nothing else. And I remember that day when we did that stuff. Anytime I do something where I go deep on an emotional level, it takes me away. Takes me away. I remember that the last scene in Star is Born, when I was sitting on a couch with Stephanie, I'd laid waste to me for a couple of days, only because I felt what I was feeling at the time. And I loved her so dearly and loved Bradley so dearly that it was all very real to me. When it becomes real, when you're telling the truth and you're being honest about whatever it is you're doing, that's when it most deeply affects me. And I try to tell the truth all the time. So